This is the popularity of wood gas, an article derived from the Driving on Wood, the Swedish transition to wood gas during World War II by Arne Kaijser. It's an interesting article about wood gas, as shown, which is something I have personally never heard about during a period that has so many significant and recent historical advances in technology, as well as just historical advances. And I was very intrigued by this uniqueness, so it's why I chose to go with this. And now I am attempting to teach you about something that I have truly never heard about before. So, in the late 1800s, Sweden gained a large dependence upon coal, which was being imported faster and faster with every year. In 1900, it was warned that the dependence could be detrimental based on the geographical location and weaknesses of Sweden if there was ever a war. 14 years later, this warning would become a reality with the beginning of World War I, though the Swedish people had not heeded this warning. Coal power covered a large percentage, about half, of the population's total energy needs. It wasn't until 1917, when Germany would begin a campaign of submarine warfare, that the Swedish would begin to feel the effects of this war, however, as it was during this event that the imports were drastically reduced. This energy crisis would lead to the creation of the Fuel Commission by the Swedish government, as well as the rationing system for different fuels, and an interest in energy vulnerability and ways to cope with it. This research was how much of this time was spent during the interwar period for Sweden, as well as many other countries. And between the 1910s and 1930s, many would attempt to find ways of creating better fuel options for finding better ways to ration said fuel. This was especially important due to oil becoming another precious commodity that was hugely relied upon. It was also during this period that gasifiers would become more prominent, which was a direct line to the wood gas that would become popular during the Second World War. These gasifiers were enhanced and first came to major prominence as being a possible alternative for engines in France, though Germany and other countries would also experiment with this energy source. While gasifiers like these had been around since the late 1800s, they had not been seriously considered as a replacement for standard oil and coal engines until there was a mass need for a new energy source outside of the standard fossil fuels. The reason that these gasifiers in particular were favored was due to a mixture of simplicity and a need for a fast fix, and the gasifiers fit the bill to a T. They were quick, though not perfect fix, during the time when the standard fossil fuels were far more difficult to come by, especially as the Great Depression hit and many countries fell into near crippling lack of funds. Indeed, this event hit all European countries hard in their own way, and in Sweden, it hit their exporting industry, especially their forestry. It was with this lack of need for wood exports that Sweden often provided that the idea came to them. Use gasifiers instead, and incite a different reason for their exports, as this would be a cheaper alternative to fossil fuels and would allow Sweden to gain more money while also cutting down on unemployment. These cars did come with some drawbacks, such as a less powerful motor and a disgusting fuel source due to the warping of the wood, as well as its tediousness and troublesomeness. As stated, it wasn't efficient or exactly world-class, but it was cheap. Due to much of the modern world suffering from the same financial burdens, gasifiers would become popular when the Second World War began to rage, as it was so cheap and easy to produce. This would become the leading fuel type of this period. Jumping ahead slightly to the end of World War II, the economic crisis had for the most part ended, as had the importing of oil, and many countries would go back to this type of fuel as it was a favorite for them. Gasifiers would lose much of its popularity as it had simply been a substitute for oil. However, it would not be entirely forgotten. Wow, I am unable to read. Some would still study the effects the gasifiers had and see if there was a way to change the fuel they now used for something better and cheaper, as well as far easier to import and export, so that if something like the Great Depression or the World Wars happened again, it would be far easier to keep their regular fuel and not need to change. As a side note, there are also some wood gasifiers that are still used for industrial and automobile purposes, specifically in countries such as China, Russia, and North Korea. And as shown in the picture, others use gasifiers simply as a unique accessory to their vehicles, or build them as projects for their car. Again, as I said, this was an interesting and unique event that happened during World War II, as I had no idea that fossil fuels became such a precious commodity during this period. Yet it makes perfect sense due to the fact that fossil fuels and the Great Depression, they go hand in hand. Fossil fuels are fairly expensive. So I found this to be a very interesting and insightful piece, and I hope that you did as well. Thank you.